Thank you for signing up for this application essay course. My name is Mike Flynn. I own a company called Engenius Learning Center. And one of the things that I've learned when I do college planning is that my first goal used to be get you into the most prestigious school possible. And by getting you into the most prestigious school possible, it made me look good. It forced you to get the best grades possible and the best test scores and kind of kill yourself to get into this very top-notch school. But I saw repeatedly that students of mine who I had pushed in the first 10 years to go to the very best schools were boomeranging, meaning that after a year they would come back and they'd be living at home and they'd be going to a community college until they went someplace else. And it struck me that I was doing the wrong thing. But I was doing what every other college planner did. Every other college planner said, let's push, because it makes you look good. Then all of a sudden I realized, I go, well, gosh, I'm failing you, right? If you're coming back, you're not doing the things, I'm not doing the things for you that you need to be successful. And that maybe you're not capable at this point in your life to do those things successfully. It's not that you can't one day, but at 17, you got to pick a major, pick a college, you got to do all these things. And I mean, honestly, when you turn 18, that might change, or 19, or 22, or 25, 30. Every time you go through one of these milestone birthdays, all of a sudden something kind of clicks in your head like, oh, I want to do that. So it's really tough at 17 to know where you want to go for the rest of your life and what you want to do. So then it became more about me finding the right fit for you, what really fits, right? You've heard the expression, you can't put a square peg into a round hole. Well, that's what I was doing. If you didn't belong at a top university, I was still jamming you in there. And it didn't make any difference if you were the lowest bottom percentile, you got into that school and you're like, right on, I'm there. But maybe it was too hard. Maybe it wasn't a good fit. So then I started to realize, okay, well, maybe what I need to do is change my focus for you. And so my focus then switched to, I want you to go to a good high school, I want you to go to a better college, and then I want you to get the best grades possible. If you get the best grades possible, then you can either go to graduate school and go to really a great graduate school because you know exactly what you want to do, or you go get the best job that you can because you've got this great GPA from a better college. And that's better than going too high and then maybe getting like a 2.9 GPA. You go, but hey, I got this big fancy degree from this college, but I kind of washed out on my first two majors and I just had to get out and I just grabbed anything and I just took the easiest major, but hey, I have that degree. As opposed to a kid who really excels in college and is doing the very best that they can and getting noticed, and professors call on them, that you guys sit at the front and you're doing all these things that you want to do to be successful, as opposed to you're the kid that sits in the back and you're struggling. So that's not what we want. We want you to be successful. And part of this process of application essays and applications is finding those schools that fit. And it's hard because you don't know. And it's even more challenging this year because you really can't go do tremendous number of college visits. You can't be flying all over the country and spending weekends and visiting your friend and spending the dorm. It just isn't going to happen this year. So you're really going to have to be careful with how you select these things. So I know you're all here for the application essay workshop, but I really feel compelled that I've done this so long and everyone seems to tell you the wrong way, in my not so humble opinion, is that they're trying to get you someplace and I'm trying to get you someplace that fits you. So really keep that under advisement, that this is what's going to be the best place for me. And so after this essay workshop, if you have more questions about that, don't hesitate to email me, call me. We can talk, we can set up a time, and we can go through in terms of what that is. Because I think that if you do set yourself up right today, you're setting yourself to graduate from that school. So my measurement now is not in, I got X number of students in at Stanford or UCLA or University of Pennsylvania, right? All these great schools. I don't measure it that way. I measure that when the kids come back and they've graduated. That's my success metric now, is that the kids I sent to a school, that's fantastic. I want you to be able to come back from that school and say, yeah, I graduated. That's when I know that I got everything done in the right way. So keep that in mind. And if that's something you want to talk to me more about, I'd be more than happy to do that. I've got some great college search tools. They're all free. They're all things that you can find on the web, but you got to use them in the right combination. So that's the thing that I want to do. Now, today's concept is we're going to work on the first 4 essay topics. I'm going to introduce the first 4 essay topics, and my goal at the end of the hour is for you to have a place to start, right? We're not going to finish anything. That's if you plan on finishing your essays tonight, we need to have a longer conversation about goal setting, because that's not a good goal to take something so important. So who read yesterday that a court said that the UCs can't use SAT and ACT scores to determine admission? Show of hands, everyone know that now? Yeah. So don't believe it. That's a lower court order. The UC system is very, very big. The College Board is over $1 billion. The ACT is over a $300 million corporation. They got some big lawyers that are going to go and try and get that overturned. So, listen, what will most likely happen is that they'll get this overturned. Then they'll submit everything in on November 30th. And then after November 30th, then another court order will come out and say, well, you can't do it, but you still got to submit. So that's my thought process about how you should be managing your SAT and ACT scores. Okay, let's go through and let's talk about the do's and don'ts of the essay topics, and we'll go through those topics in a little bit. But the very first and most important thing is that you need to keep your focus narrow and personal, right? This is a personal essay. This is not a chronology of your life. So you need to have a single point or thesis. For your for your UC essays, this is 350 words, right? I mean, that's not a whole lot. You get there really quickly. Once you start writing, 350 goes by fast. Doesn't mean what you're going to write's good, but it goes by quickly. So you need to have one idea, and that one idea needs to be communicated very, very well. The reader should be able to follow the point from beginning to end, and you should be able to ask someone just to read your introduction and see if they would want to read more. Right? That's the critical element. Should I want to read more after I've read my introduction? And sadly, having read thousands and thousands of essays in my career, I don't want to read after the first couple of sentences. And that's not to be mean. It's just that your lives are not that interesting. You're 17, 18 years old. You haven't lived yet, right? There's only been a couple of essays that I've ever read the first or second draft that I go, wow, that's great. I want to read more. Most of the time it's like, okay, hold on. Don't take it personally. We've got to carve this up, right? That's a big, big deal. You can't, this is a personal essay. You're going to be revealing yourselves, but don't feel bad when someone starts taking a hack at it. If they don't, okay, here's how you can determine who loves you and who's your friend. If they read your essay and go, that's great. That's not your friend. Because your friend is going to go, you know what, I got bored. I'm sorry. You're a really nice kid, but I got bored. I lost interest. You're my best friend, and I stopped caring about you 10 words in, right? And that happens. So the other thing, too, is that you're not telling this admissions committee all the things you've done. Because no one cares. This is not a chronology. This is a personal statement. I'm going to say that about a dozen or 2 dozen times tonight. This is a personal statement. A personal statement reflects how you reacted, how you feel, what you grew from what scared you, etc. They can get a list of activities from anywhere, but they can't get that reaction from you. So your GPA and your classes, that's your list of activity. Oh, I was captain of this, that's your list of activities. Blah, 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 I'm wonderful. That's great, that's your list of activities. But I would love to know what kept you up at night. I would love to know what you were most fearful of and how you responded to that. Because see, that's what makes you personal. That's what makes you human. And that's what draws the reader in. So right now, I'm not teaching a class. I'm teaching to you. Right? Even though there might be kids here, I've got a YouTube stream going, I'm only teaching to you. And I'm trying to connect with you. And so when you write your essay, that's your focus. Is you're not writing for a committee, you're writing for one person. Who's that one person? And you have to make believe you have this person in mind and you're writing to them. And that's what's going to draw you in. Right? Or draw them in, excuse me. And then that's going to put you into the school, hopefully. So the other thing that you need to do is after you've stated your 1-point thesis, we're not trying to give a summary of the world. We're trying to prove 1 point. Is that you need to develop the main idea with specific facts that add spice. So we've all had stew, we've all had soup, we've all had some sort of dish, a liquidy, soupy dish. And sometimes it can be too salty. And you're like, oh, this is no good. And sometimes it can be totally bland, like, okay, I don't want to eat this. There's nothing to it. And then other times there's just that perfect amount of spice. And that perfect amount of spice is like, yeah, that's good. I want more of that. Well, that's the way that you write your personal statement essay. Too many big words, too much salt. Too many things, the long and flowery, twisty road that went uphill and downhill and through snow and over the river, off to grandmother's house we go. Okay, yeah, I walked across the street, right? What was critical to the story? The fact that it was the windy road or the fact that you had to walk across the street to get someplace? So you got to know what type of spice to use and how much. Because if you don't, then your essay's going to suck. There's just no other way to discuss it. And so that's the critical element, is how do I create a scenario where this essay has got all the right amount of spice? And that's what you have other people read it for. Because I can tell you, I have written books. Look, the third book that I wrote was on, probably fourth or fifth book that I wrote was on study skills. And the ones that know me, you know, I think everything that comes out of me is magical, right, Jessica? Yeah, exactly. Yes, Liz, thank you for agreeing. Everything comes out of me is just so fantastic. And that book sold nothing. I mean, I didn't even make back anywhere close to the amount of time I put into it. Talk about making money. I mean, I lost huge amounts of money just in terms of time. But I thought it was so wonderful because it was all the things I would want to know. And you know what I did? That was one book I didn't get a lot of collaboration with. So I didn't have someone telling me, Mike, that's no good. That's boring. Now, the other books that sold a ton, I got people to give me a lot of feedback, and we worked through a lot of things. And the study skills was a pet project, and I threw it out there, and it just sucked. So you're going to need someone to read this to help you out, right? That can be me, can be one of my tutors, could be a parent, could be a friend. But you have to remember that this is a pretty critical thing. So elevate the person that's going to read this, right? And if it is one of your friends that just is going to say, yeah, this is great, they're really not your friend. I recognize you may not want to give it to one of your parents because you might feel embarrassed. So find someone, like I said, it's either me, one of my tutors, or someone else that can help. And really the critical thing here is I'm taking the reader on a journey of discovery. That's what the person has to be able to do. So you feel you're taking the person on a journey of discovery, right? In your mind, I did everything humanly possible. But when the person reads it and goes, yeah, I went nowhere. Thank them. Don't get mad. Don't get upset. Thank them. Go, oh my God, thank you, because I thought this was perfect. And you're telling me it's not. Because if you're telling me it's not, then there's a good chance that the admission reader is going to tell me it's not. And then I've screwed my chance. Right? So that's the critical component here. So there's a couple of examples I'd like to use. Oh, one other thing. Don't use cliches. Cliches were written one time, be original. The cliche as you use it doesn't mean the same thing as when it was originally written. And when you do write with cliches, it generally shows that you have a lack of creativity. So it would be better to not have a cliche and let someone think you have a lack of creativity than to use a cliche and you prove to them that you have none. So here's a couple of examples. I want to help people. I've gotten so much out of life through the love and guidance of my family. I feel that many individuals have not been as fortunate. Therefore, I would like to expand the lives of others. Real essay topic. Grammatically correct, right? Could have come in right out of the middle of one of yours. There's no spice. Here's something a little better. My mom and dad stood on plenty of sidelines until their shoes filled with water or their fingers started to freeze. I think that kind of commitment is what I'd like to bring to working with fourth graders. Okay, that's a whole lot better. And so that was taking one student's essay, their line, and saying, okay, well, why? What has been the love of your family? Oh, my parents would always they'd go out to soccer, and soccer we'd play all year round, and it'd sometimes be horrible. Okay, what were your parents like? Oh, they were miserable, they hated it, and I hated blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then that's how we get there. So your critical element when you're writing this essay is don't try and write. Think about all the other things that went into that and let something squeeze out of that. Because I can tell you one of the hardest things in the world to do is just all of a sudden sit down and make magic happen. So we got to get you to write about a lot of different things, and you look and you go, oh, there's a little glimmer of magic up there. There's a little glimmer up there. Okay, this one's not so good, but maybe there's life in that one. And you pull all those together and you get something good. All right, so those would be the do's. Some of the don'ts. Don't just write what you think they want to hear. Dear God, don't do that. If you just write what they want to hear, you're going to be like everyone else. So UCLA had 100,000 plus applicants last year. So I'm not going to ask you to show off and know your math skills, but if you have to write 4 UC essays and there are 8 topics, that means that there were 400,000 plus essays that needed to be read. How many of those essays you think really sucked? A lot of them. They let in about 10,000 kids, roughly. We're just using some round numbers. And so there were probably 30 to 40,000 essays out of the 400,000 that weren't bad. And that's why those kids got into there. And so that's your goal, is I don't want to be like the 400,000. I want to be closer to the top 50,000. Now, I would love for you to say, Mike, you inspired me to write the greatest essay ever. You're so wonderful. Right, Liz? That's what I like to hear? Yes. But I just know that that's not the way these things are written. These things take time, and they take a lot of energy, and they take a lot of effort and introspection. But don't try and make the perfect essay your first time out. Try and aim to not be the worst essay. Try to aim to be about the fifth, somewhere in the middle. Throw together a bunch of different things and then go from there. And then we'll start squeezing it and get something really good. Kyle, I'll ask you this. What happens when you compress coal? What do we get? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's what we're looking for, right? We're going to start with a big bunch of coal. It's black, it's dirty, it's not pretty, it's not good. And we're just going to keep squeezing it, and at the end, we're going to get something really pretty. Okay? The other thing to think about is this concept of rhythm. And this is something that I know I certainly didn't pioneer because I've learned this from other teachers, but this seems to be a lost art. That this concept of rhythm is so, to me, it's so simple. But what happens when I read essays, I'll see people write long sentence, long sentence, long sentence, long sentence. And then they go to paragraph 2, long sentence, long sentence, long sentence, long sentence. And guess what paragraph 3 looks like? Long sentence, long sentence, long sentence, long sentence. There's no rhythm. That's boring. The reader falls asleep partway through because there's no variance. But what if we periodically substituted a long sentence with a short one? Right? And look at the emphasis there. Or what happens if we start a paragraph, what happens if we start a paragraph off with a short sentence? Hell, we could even get cool and vary it up. And now there's almost this cool rhythm that develops. So I've used this before for students taking SAT essays, ACT essays, is that there's a 3-word marketing slogan in sports that's made more money than anything else. Just do it. Right? We all know that one. We've all heard it. We've all somehow seen a Nike commercial. Just do it. Billions of dollars are traded because of that stupid little 3-sentence phrase. So now, when you watch a Nike commercial, they start off with, someone running, waking up early and running in the rain, or they see someone riding their bike, or they see someone in the weight room lifting, blah, 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 blah. And there's this 25 seconds of these longer form things. And then what's the last 2 sentences on the whole thing? The Nike swoosh. However, what is this? I don't even know what the swoosh looks like. Sorry. But then they just say, just do it. That's the punctuation. That's the spice. That's what made the whole commercial interesting, because they punctuated it with something special, and it all had to do with rhythm. Now, the other way you could do it is you could just say, just go do it. Right? This would be maybe the alternative pattern. Just do it. Something long, and then you finish it off with just do it. And so people go, well, I don't know. Does that really happen in literature? Does that really happen in speeches or essays? And I give you Dr. Martin Luther King on the steps of the Washington Monument saying, I have a dream. I have a dream. 4 words in that sentence. And he must have used it something like 20 times. I don't know. I studied that in college. I can't remember how many times he used it. But he just kept coming back to, I have a dream. I have a dream. And it was the glue that tied everything together. But it took all of those longer sentences and punctuated it so nicely. So whatever you do, don't forget about rhythm. One of the next don'ts is don't use 50 words when 5 will do. And that plays on the heels of rhythm. There is a time for a long sentence. There is a time for a subordinated sentence. And then there is a time for just a direct, straightforward sentence. So what I would suggest is don't try and develop rhythm in your initial phrasing. Just write. And then go back and look at it and say, wait a second, okay, this is boring. How can I spice this up? I don't want to change. I don't need to come up with a new idea. I don't need to do any of this. I just need to spice it up a little bit. Ooh, how about if I change the rhythm pattern? Oh, look, I cut this sentence in half. I don't take anything out. I just use this. And the actually best way that I've ever come up with to develop a good solid rhythm is to take the very last sentence that you write in a paragraph or of an essay and move it to the front. Because after you've written your whole essay, your conclusion's strong because you've been writing it the whole time. You know what you want to say. But when you start off your essay, you don't know what you're writing. You just start writing. And now all of a sudden, I got this beautiful little thing. Well, don't hide it at the end. Bring it out front. Let everyone see it. Flash that diamond right off the bat. Get someone's attention. So when we talk about rhythm and we talk about changing up the sentence, here's an example. Over the years, it has been pointed out to me by my parents, friends, and teachers, and I have even noticed this about myself as well, that I am not the neatest person in the world. Grammatically correct sentence, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, how about we change it up just a touch? I'm a slob. There you go. I'm a slob. 3 words, a contraction and 2 other words. And it said everything that the other one did. And now you could go ahead and take some elements of that other one. My parents tell me a slob. My friends call me a slob. I've even noticed I'm a slob. See, we develop a rhythm. And then we can go into what that says. And you might say, well, Mike, why would I say I'm a slob? I go, well, because this is a personal essay. And you'd be amazed at how little revealing things like that can go onto something else. So why does it being a slob? It says, well, I was sloppy. And that sloppiness transcended everything in my life. I would lose assignments. I would do this. I would do that. I would forget to turn things in. I just didn't have this care. And then one day I realized that being a slob was not just me being messy, but it was being messy in life. And that was the moment that all of a sudden I decided I can get better grades. I'm smart enough. I just need to care. Right? This is how we explain where you got B's and C's in your freshman year or your sophomore year, but then all of a sudden you caught fire and you did really well. Right? And that's what that one was from a kid that really struggled initially, but figured it out at the end. And so that's a great way to draw your reader in, right? I'm trying to have that conversation with just you. I'm a slob. Okay? It's interesting. Tell me more. You don't want to hear any more when I say, over the years, it has been pointed out to me by my parents, friends, and teachers, and even I've noticed on occasion, that I'm not the neatest person in the world. But if I come out and punch you right between the eyes and say, kids, I'm a slob. Okay, all right, let's see where this guy is going with this, right? Okay, starters. Here's some things that I would like you to think about. I don't want you to write any of this, but I want you to think about this right now. What aspects of your high school career did you enjoy or dislike the most? There should be a question mark at the end of that, sorry. So there's no personal essay that asks you that specific question. But there are there are topics that ask you what is something that you get started and you can't stop talking about, right? And so this is a way to get you to write for content. And so I'm a horrible artist, but I know that we have Lego building blocks that kind of go on top of each other. And we can build things when we put all these things together. But if I have Lego blocks and Duplo blocks, those are the great big ones that you had as a kid, and the Legos are the smaller ones, those two don't work together because you're trying to combine two unlike things. So what I find works best is go through and write a bunch of different content that's all related to what you need to write about, but is not what you need to write about. Because there's a tremendous amount of pressure. The moment that you crack open an essay topic, you feel the pressure, I have to perform. And in reality, you don't have to perform. We don't have to turn this in until November 30th. So if you don't have to turn this in until November 30th, we got a lot of time to screw up. So what aspects of your high school career did you enjoy, dislike the most? because we're going to start revealing these personal feelings. Next question I want you to ask yourself is, how do you define success? Right? How do you define success? And success is different. And I have an example from an essay that I'm going to share with you in a second that is going to show you that success is measured in various ways. The next one, what kind of person do you want to become? Oh, I want to be rich and famous. I want to be an Instagram star. I want to be a YouTube star, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. But why? That's really what we're looking for, right? It's not what kind of person do you want to become. It's why do you want to become that kind of person? The essay that the college is going to ask you is why. But what I want you to do is I want you to write about what. Because if we list off the what, we can get to the why. I find it very, very hard for you to start off with the why and then get to the what. So order is everything. I'm trying to give you the easiest order. Then what experiences have shaped your growth? Well, I was not in a near-death car accident when I was a junior in high school, but some of my best friends were. A couple kids died. A couple kids that I didn't know died in that car. There's this hill out in Almaden, out by Leland. Max, you might know it, Mockingbird. And so what happens, you drive like 70, 80 miles an hour, you go over the hill, you'll catch air. And these kids caught air and they didn't see the garbage truck was on the wrong side of the road and smashed into the garbage truck. The kids in the front seat all died. Kid in the middle came through the back, had something poked through his chest, and the other kids had some brain injuries. I was not part of that accident, but it forever shaped my life because I recognized, wow, they went out at lunch. They were just screwing around at lunch. They went to someone's house. They go, hey, let's go jump off a Mockingbird and then we'll go back to school. And it just changed like that. So it made me realize, wow, how precious things are. But I could have never, ever figured out how precious life was if that didn't happen, right? So sometimes you have to have these what before you can figure out the why. Name your academic interests. There is no essay topic that they're going to ask you what your academic interests are. But one of the essay topics that is going to be asked is, how do you feel about a certain subject and what is exciting to you? So if we start going through, so what are your academic interests? Okay, I love math. Great. What's my next question? Why? Why do you love math? Well, there's an order to it. It makes sense. English, there's no rules. There's no correct answer is the best answer. But math, there's always a correct or incorrect answer. Great. We can now shape your personality that way. Were any classes in high school too challenging? Okay, now the very first thing you're thinking, whoa, Mike, don't tell the school that this was too hard for me. I want into this school. Don't say that I've got a weakness. Oh, hell yes, you want to say you have a weakness. The reason you want to say you have a weakness is because it shows that you're human. But more importantly, it shows that you recognize you're human. We all know that you're just dumb, snotty, teenage, bratty, punky kids. Yes, Jessica, I was really thinking about you when I said that. Okay, you too, Liz. But we just know that that's the way you are. So admitting, wow, I haven't done a whole lot in my life. I haven't figured this out. Gosh, that's so refreshing to a college essay reader to go, I want this kid, because this kid understands life. The kid that walks around and says, I am so wonderful. Nope, we don't care about you. Boring. But the kid that understands that they don't have everything figured out and that they're scared and that they're worried that they may not be smart enough, that's the kid I want to be with. That's the kid I want working for me. I want that kid in my school. What was the most difficult way for you to learn? I hate it when some guy in a dark room stands on a pane of glass and talks and writes and makes fun of some students that he knows. Okay, so be it, right? If that's what you don't like, then that's good. Explain that. Well, why? Well, because school should be more blah, 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 right? Or say, gosh, math didn't make sense to me because I struggle to the form I teach English for a reason. The form of math, I don't have the capacity in my brain to keep it all straight. But hell, I can make English words bend however direction I want. I love that. Oh, I don't like that. Hey, we'll just take and twist this around a little bit and we'll make those words work out. Math, you got to be really precise. So if we like precision, math and science are great. If precision scares us, then maybe humanities is a better subject. So explain that. Why is that difficult for you? And then finally, the one that I think is really, really hard for people. What would your friends list as your best qualities? And so this is why this is hard. Because I can tell you, right? I can say what I think my best qualities are. If you have an hour, I'll list them all, and we'll still have a little bit more time at the end for me to list all my other wonderful qualities. But beyond all those wonderful qualities, what would my friends say? Well, some of my friends, it would be a real short conversation. They wouldn't have much to say. I don't know, he thinks he's funny. Or he tries hard. Right? And some other friends will see past the veneer and then they'll be able to give you, that I actually don't have a black heart. That there is something beating in there, that I do care about people. But that's hard to admit. Because now all of a sudden instead of looking at the mirror, I'm looking at what someone else is looking at. And what's worse is that you have to put that down on paper. That's why that's hard. Because it sounds egotistical. And we don't want to sound that way. But it's critical that you recognize what's needed and then you have to come across that. I want to show you a sample essay here. I want to show you what the outcome of everything we just got done talking about. Right? I want to show you the difference. So this was a student's first draft. And the topic was, describe an example of leadership experience which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. Okay? That was the essay topic. And then here was that person's essay. I'll read it to you. It's only 350 words. Oops. During my junior year of high school, I was awarded the job as captain. The previous captain, the only senior on the team, quit because some of controversy the way she was handling the team. My coach does not generally allow for juniors to be captains, but he had no choice because the only senior on the team quit. Being captain was a tremendous honor that I look forward to and hope to take what I have learned from last year and apply it to this year. Our team last year was not very good and it frustrated our senior captain. She played on a high-level traveling team and felt that our team was not mature enough and we were not deserving of her level of skill or leadership. It is true that we were not very good, but she should have handled this situation differently, particularly being captain. She was often rude during practices and games and not very supportive. We had a very young team and she often bullied them, made them feel insecure, and often incited fights between players, forcing the team morale to be at an all-time low. The coach eventually removed her as captain and she was so embarrassed that she quit the team. I was then told by my coach that I was the new captain, that I only had a month left in the season to change the morale and try and get us a win. We were winless so far. I took the challenge seriously and immediately changed the morale of the team by having the team dinners. We'll go to practice with the younger players and put our time trying to restore their confidence. I feel like I showed leadership in accepting the position midway through the season and by working with players to restore their confidence. I was very doubtful of my ability to lead during the season because I often felt bullied by the old captain and my confidence was low. But I knew this was going to be a great learning experience for me and something that I would look back on and feel proud of. Okay, so this was a first draft and she was 13 words over. She got 350 words and she was 363. All right, so let's go back. Is there any rhythm? No, right? Boring. It's grammatically correct for the most part. I mean, there's a couple of things that we got to fix, but that was okay. But it's a chronology. Did we ever find out how she felt? Only at the very end. But at that point, the admissions reader had already jumped off because this was one of thousands of bad essays that he or she has to read. Was there anything in here that was going to draw you in as a reader to feel good about this kid? Nope. But this is the starting point for thousands and thousands of essays that I've read over my career. This is what they all look like. All right, so now let's talk about what we did to make that one be a little spicier. And I know I gotta share, hold on. Okay, so now on your screen you should have the second essay. I'll blow it up so it's better. And I don't think this was the finished copy because I don't get to often see them, but this was the next to the finished copy. So exactly the same topic. You tell me which one was better. I was working harder than I ever had before. The stress was killing me. I couldn't sleep or eat. I was miserable and hated being a leader. Okay, I'm willing to read more. Now, the only thing I would have done was I would have taken and made the stress was killing me be the first sentence. That was my suggestion for the student. The student opted to not do that way. She thought it was too aggressive. But I like that Nike thing, punch him right in the face. Okay, so I lead off with what I felt. And then I go into a little story. During my junior year, I took over for a captain that was a bully. She eventually quit the team. Our team morale was low and so were our skills. We had no wins and more losses than I could count, or than I wanted to count. So automatically we got to the exact same place in a half a paragraph that it took that other girl a couple of paragraphs to get to. I got the honor to lead this team because my coach admired my work ethic. He was hoping I could inspire my teammates. I had my doubts because I was not a very good soccer player. After all, why would my teammates follow a girl who had not scored a goal all year? So she's telling you, she's being honest. I'm not a great soccer player. I'm having self-doubts. This is a very mature essay for a 17-year-old girl to write at this point. I decided I would do everything the opposite way the captain did. We immediately started having team dinners or repair morale. We practiced on weekends to build our skills. Despite all the extra effort, we still didn't get any wins. Okay, so she's a failure, right? Or so I thought. Now, I will tell you, just like I wanted Martin Luther King, I have a dream. I wanted her to have, or so I thought earlier on, and I wanted her to use so I thought 2 or 3 times throughout her essay as a way to weave it all together. Before the final game, my coach took me aside to congratulate me on what a fantastic job I had done during the team. What? We suck, was the response to him. We still had not won a game. How was I a success? Again, this personal self-doubt. He told me, should be, again, not the finished copy, but her last one. Told me that there was more to leading a team than just counting wins. He reminded me that I took a miserable team and turned them into a group that fought for each other. More importantly, we enjoyed to play soccer again. This was my aha moment. I got it. Lead by example and worry about your effort, not about the outcome. My dad always told me to manage activity, not results. I finally understood what he meant by that. Until that moment, I hated being a leader. But once I learned what leadership looked like and how it is measured, I couldn't wait for the chance to be a leader again. I want to take what I learned and do even more this coming season. That, I think, is a really good essay. It starts off strong and finishes strong. The phrasing is tight. It's got a nice rhythm to it. I wanted that or so I thought 2 or 3 times throughout to keep that thread, but she opted not to do it. But, you know, in hindsight, she got into the schools that she wanted to, so she won. But those are the differences. That's what I'm looking for you to do between these 2 essays. Between your first draft and your final draft, is be real, be honest, be personal. Okay? All right. What I would like you to do now, I sent you all a link. And that link was the personal essay topics from the College Board. I'm sorry, my God, got College Board on the brain. From the UC system. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to have it open on your screen if you can. That way we can kind of highlight and talk about some things and you can read ahead, but I've also learned that having my lovely face in your face so you can't fall asleep on me is important. All right, so we're going to talk about the first 4 topics here. Describe an example of your leadership experience in which you positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contribute to group efforts over time. So that's kind of what we just did with that first one, right? It was a very specific thing. Leadership isn't just necessarily a title. You can lead by example. You can lead by a negative example, right? And it's actually okay if you were ever a negative influence on a team. You can mention that. Now, the trick to anything that you do is they want to see that you can learn. That is the most important thing. They're not expecting you to be perfect. They know that your best work is ahead of you, not behind you. So seriously, if you can't show that you've screwed up and that you can't learn and improve, then you're never going to really get very far in life. And you're not going to get very far at the UC system if that's the case. So the critical aspect here is no matter what you do, make certain that you have this capacity to say, I've learned from my mistakes. I've also learned from my success. And your willingness to admit that you failed and you've learned from it is actually very positive. So I've always been in education, but my wife has been in marketing for high-tech companies for years and years and years. And Max, your mom and my wife both worked at a company called General Magic. And General Magic was this amazing company that they had the guys that created the Macintosh, they had the guy that created the Walkman, the iPod, the iPhone. All of these people worked at the same company, and they failed. And they failed miserably. They got hundreds of millions of dollars, they had the brightest minds in the world, and they failed. Some of those people that worked at that company went on to then create some of the biggest things ever. So this one guy, Tony Fadell, he created the iPod, then he helped create the iPhone, then he created Nest, right? Now it's Google Nest or whatever. All of those products, that's all from one guy. He learned so much because he watched all the failures that occurred at this company called General Magic. The guys that created the Macintosh created a bunch of other really cool things. There was this other guy, so many great things came from that company after they closed down because of the failure. And those guys all made fortunes. And the reason they all made fortunes is because people recognized, hey, how cool, you failed, you learned a lesson. So never be afraid to show that I've learned something, I wasn't good at it, but I hope I get better at it. That's a really honest and open thing that you have to admit to yourself. Now, it's hard to admit to yourself, honestly. And this person was afraid that in her essay, she was afraid she wasn't going to be able to lead because she didn't score goals. Well, that's not what people look at, right? You look at these coaches in sports or even government. A lot of those people can't do the things that they're asking their players or their people to do, but they have a way of corralling them and getting them to go someplace else. And there's a lot of respect paid for someone who recognizes, listen, I'm not the best athlete, but I can put all the best athletes together and make them win. Golden State Warriors, a local team, Their coach, named Steve Kerr, was not a starting basketball player. He was always coming off of the bench, yet he is one of the very best coaches in the game. And I shouldn't say all, but most players really respect him because he's smart enough to recognize, I know how to make players play. So if you're in a leadership group, was there ever a group where people weren't doing it, but you had this really brilliant person, but they couldn't get motivated? Great. You were able to whisper in that person's ear and get them going. You had someone else completely detached from the project, didn't want to do it, but you were able to get them to complete one piece. Right? And that's what leadership is leadership is not always standing in front and taking shots, but sometimes working silently in the background to put all these pieces together. And I think that's a very important thing for you to recognize, is that leadership looks different, and your goals on leadership are not always wins, just like the girl with the soccer team. It wasn't always that she won. In fact, they didn't win a single game all season. But when she scored a goal, right, this got cut out of the essay, but when she scored a goal, they celebrated like she'd scored in the World Cup. That's what leadership was, right? They were so happy that that's who they were pushing for. So sometimes it's difficult to say, well, no, I'm not really a leader. Okay, well, have you ever taken a leadership role in a group where you had to say, listen, I'm going to run with this? And how did you motivate? And listen, there's an expression called making a mountain out of a molehill. All we need is this little kernel of truth to make it a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. That's all we need to do to write a 350-word essay. We just need a little morsel. You give me a morsel, I can write you a nice 350-word essay. Now, 700 words out of the Common App? Okay, we're going to need something more substantial. Essay number 2. Every person has a creative side, and it can be expressed in many ways. Problem solving, original, innovative thinking, artistically, to name a few. Describe how you would express your creative side. If I'm like you, I think of creative as only being someone who can draw, someone who can sculpt, someone who can design that. That's what I think of as creative. But it's more than that. Again, it says right at the very beginning, can you be a creative problem solver? Yeah, one time in math class, I used the answer first to solve a problem instead of working out the problem. Okay, maybe that's pretty good, because that's actually the way that you solve SAT and ACT math questions, is that you take a problem and it's called guess and check. And so did you go against an established belief? Because most everyone starts at the top and goes down, but you go, wait a second, let's take a look at this differently. They recognize that you haven't cured cancer. But are you open to this concept of looking at the world from a different perspective, something different than your teacher says? Right? That's what they want to see. And then how do you get influenced by this? Are you a creative person in all things? Right? Do you fold your towel differently than your parents do? Is that creative? Well, no, but I have this mindset that I'm always looking at the world a little differently. And if I'm always looking at the world a little differently, I then really feel that I'm seeing things that others aren't. Okay, there's that morsel. I can write about that. So this is why don't try and write the essay. Try and write about a bunch of different things and find one little piece to grab onto, and then that's what we're going to chew on. Number 3, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? Most everyone's least favorite essay to write, but the one they almost always start off with. The reason you start off with is because you hate to talk about yourself, but okay, yes, I'm good. I can run, I can speak, I can make pottery, I can do all these wonderful things. I'm good at math. I won the physics award, blah, blah, blah. But then you have to go about talking about your greatest skill. So rather than say your greatest skill is maybe some sort of academic pursuit, are you empathetic? Are you a great listener? Are you a terrific friend? Are you someone that inspires others? Those are all fantastic skills that maybe you don't think about. But again, we only have 350 words to write, so maybe you can say something about that. And then, was there a specific example that you can say? Yeah, I had this kid that went to another high school and then she transferred over and she was scared to death. And then, I worked with her and got her to feel comfortable there. I think my skill is taking and helping people feel relaxed in an environment. Although that's maybe not a skill that, there's a no job requirement. How do you put that on a resume? Make people feel good, right? No, it just doesn't work that way. But this is an essay where you get to talk about this talent or skill. So again, this is one of the first ones that people will write because it's something that you can grab onto, but it's one of the harder ones for people to write because you feel as if you're being boastful. So this is a trap though. Most everyone wants to write their resume. I won this, I did this, I got these many stickers, I got these many awards, I have more reading points at anyone at the school. Boring, no one cares. Give me something to hang on to. Number 4, describe how you've taken advantage of a significant educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier you have faced. So this is the COVID-19 challenge trap. And we'll talk about the Common App in a couple weeks for those that are going to do that one. But the Common App challenge or question is, hey, explain your COVID-19 learning experience, right? Or what did that mean for you? This is not that essay. Don't write about your learning challenges unless you were the 2 kids that had to go to Taco Bell to get their Wi-Fi. Did you see that one? Right, so there's a couple kids and they're down in Salinas and they did their Wi-Fi, or they didn't have Wi-Fi at their house, so they went every day to Taco Bell and sat out in front of Taco Bell to siphon their Wi-Fi. That's pretty good. Those are kids that want to learn. I like that, right? So that's a barrier. What barriers would you have at your age in your situation? So we think about, is there something that helped you get prepared for school? Is there something that made you recognize how precious life is or whatever? So for me, I moved schools 3 times in second grade. The first school, I just got moved because a new school opened up, and then my family moved from my second school to another city. And so I had 3 different teachers, 3 different levels, and I struggled in second grade. And I struggled so much the teachers called home to my parents and thought that I was learning disabled. They used a far nastier term back in the 70s for this, but now they would label me as ADD or ADHD or autistic or anything. But yeah, so my barrier was that I lacked confidence. And I struggled in math, and it affected almost everything that I did. And I got labeled. And so once you get labeled in a school, it's really tough to get out of that. And I didn't get unlabeled until I moved again in 7th grade so I could start fresh. So that was a barrier that I had that affected me, and it affected me all the way till college. When I had a professor that sat me down and said, you are smart, you just don't believe in yourself, let's work through this, right? And it was a dramatic transformation. So this barrier could be some physical thing. I don't have access to this. Or it could be a mental thing that you don't have access to. I doubt myself. I have a long history of doubting myself. Whatever. These are things that can come up that can be a barrier to you. And again, all we need to do is find just that little morsel. But what you want to do is you want to recognize how you overcame the challenge. They want to see that you overcame the challenge. Okay, in my case, I didn't overcome this until college. So what I would write about in high school was that I recognize what the challenge is. And I don't know what the answer is, but I hope that when I get to your institution, I hope that I can find someone that can guide me through this so that I can overcome this barrier. See, so that shows that you're thinking forward enough that you've got a path forward. If you just throw up your hands, yeah, I'm no good at math, I'm out. I'm going to take one math class, get my general education requirement, I'm out. Says, no, I have this real struggle with this. It's something that scares me. It keeps me awake at night. Reveal your inner feelings, but say that I'm not so afraid of it that I'm not willing to take on the challenge to make it go away. So in everything that we do here, we want to recognize that the most important thing to focus in on is this pattern. And this will be the last thing, and then I'll let you guys go. I'll answer questions for you too. But this pattern is, what's the lure? And the lure reads to the introduction. And then from the introduction, I have your story. Okay? So when you go fishing, you use a lure. And you try and trap someone. And it's flashy. And it grabs their attention. Okay, well, let's remember. What was the girl's first sentence? I was working harder than ever before. The stress was killing me. I couldn't sleep or eat. I was miserable and hated being a leader. That's the lure. Right? That's something that draws me in. Then my intro. My intro was the thing that then makes you understand what the story is. So this girl, during my junior year, I took over for a captain that was a bully. She eventually quit the team. Our team morale was low, and so were our skills. We had no wins and more losses than I wanted to count. That's my intro. And then my story, right? And you know what that is. When you follow this very simple pattern, your essays have pop. Your essays are memorable. Your essays lead the reader to want to read more. That first essay I read you had no lure. All it had was the story. There wasn't even an intro. It was just a story. The story sucked, honestly. But go and give someone something interesting to read. Hit them right between the eyes. And then give them a little bit of an overview. What am I going to do? And so the very final thing I will tell you tonight is the 3-step method for magic. Ready? Tell them what you are going to tell them. So number 1, tell them what you're going to tell them. So obviously the lure is not that way, right? The lure is to capture their attention. But the intro, hey, I got this team had no morale, and I didn't think we can do anything with wins. Okay, now I'm going to tell them what you're going to tell them. Step number 2 is tell them. And Kyle Booker, what do you think step number 3 is?
I don't know. I have a guess. Tell them what you told them?
Yes, thank you, Kyle, because you've heard this about a dozen times in your life now. So step number one. So I have a lure. That's the flashy thing that catches attention. Then I have my intro, and my intro is I'm going to tell them what I'm going to tell them. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to tell you this, I'm going to tell you that. The girl simply rattled off what was happening. Then she told her story. And then she finished it off by telling them what there was, is that I measured wins. I was wrong in measuring wins when I should have measured the success of what was happening. I manage activity, not results. That's what she learned. So if you use this pattern, right, as your guiding principle, and you follow the storyline this way, you have a really good chance of having an essay someone wants to read.